Hi, I'm Alice Taylor. I'm the CEO of MakieLab, and we're a startup. And we are technically 2 years old, but we basically got started a year and a half ago in the business of 3D printing consumer-facing goods. I'm going to tell you what that's been like. This is basically my story, and it actually leads on really nicely from the two previous presentations, because what they brought up, this idea of democratization and people being able to have a go, I think what I'm about to show you is kind of what we've been doing. My whole background previous to this venture was pure digital. So I got started in '95 building websites, and then I moved to games. I did a startup doing digital goods, avatars, chat, forums, etc. in kind of '98 to 2002. And then I spent a long time working with children's and teens properties for broadcasters. But I was always the in-house nerd looking at innovation. What MakieLab does is we build apps for young people where they can modify and create a toy just using their finger. So at the moment we have a website and an app live, and we're building on a game. And what they do is they modify an avatar just like you would see in any ordinary video game, multiple versions of things you can move and tweak with sliders. And what that produces is a completely unique face. And so the end product is a completely unique toy for a child. The way it works is the interface goes through this process. There's a low-res version because obviously it's running on an iPad or a website, and then our software process builds that and automates the whole system so that the pieces come back to us and we assemble a toy and send it out to our customers. We use two types of 3D printing. We use traditional FDM desktop stuff to muck around with, prototype on, although as you know, the improvements in this area has been pretty radical in the past couple of years, so we're just about to take this into stores and do live printing of accessories for the dolls. But at the moment, for the actual printed product, we're using SLS nylon on professional grade machines. And what the end result looks something like this. So we've had about 100 and something thousand registered users, over 1 million digital Makies made, but when they're made physical, they end up each one unique. Apart from these four, who are our new on-the-shelf product, I'll show you later in a store. They're the non-player characters from our game. So we make everything in London. This is one of the amazing things about this technology, is when we set out to make this, we set out to make toys that would be interesting, both for parents and kids, but we also set out to make toys without having to go to China. China is amazing. The whole traditional manufacturing pipeline works brilliantly, but is it sustainable? Is it accessible to somebody like me? I'll go into this in a little bit right now. We make them here, each one is unique, and they're toys. So the other thing that we've achieved this year is certification. This is really important for toys. So it's a world first, but everybody can follow. The basic white nylon coming out of SLS machines is fundamentally toy safe. Obviously what you do with the toy, the clothes, whatever the toy is, what you add onto it also has to be certified. Our dolls went through EN 71, which is for the EU, and passed, and now we're working on America and Asia. We also got the Lion Mark, and then this year we got a commendation medal from the independent toy retailers, which has happened really fast for us. I mean, I was frankly amazed that the retailers had even kind of were aware of what was going on, because of course the product isn't in independent retail yet. We start off as a purely digital product going straight to our customers through the internet, until now avoiding all traditional retail. So how did this come about? The idea came to me in 2010. Now I was aware of 3D printing back from when it was called, stuff happening in Fab Labs. Because my job was in innovation, I would hang around nerds and nerd conferences, and we'd see this stuff coming out. So here was fabbing. And I was given two books in 2009, The Real Toy Story and Makers. The Makers is about hackers and the kind of near future of stuff that was happening in Fab Labs, and the guys in that book made toys out of upcycling old toys. And then in the Real Toy Story, which again was a massive eye-opener for me, it told the story of the traditional industry and what's happened in the past 30 years. Britain and Germany used to have huge toy manufacturing capabilities, Spain, Europe too, and fundamentally now about 95% of the world's toys are made in China. And that's happened over the past 30 years of kind of consolidation and a very big system of pipeline manufacturing. One of the things that happened when I read Makers, Corey, the author, that's the paperback cover of, I think, the British version. One of the readers modeled it himself, uploaded it to Shapeways, printed the front cover and sent it through. And Corey showed this to me and I immediately wanted to start picking it apart and assembling it because obviously it's an Airfix. And I got shouted at. But that was one of those moments where I was like, wow, digital to physical instantly, just blended. And this changes everything for me. I felt the same about this as I did when I first saw the internet, where I looked at the internet, looked at a web page and went, this changes everything. Fundamentally, it opens up a whole bunch of things that people couldn't do before. So this is a traditional toy store. Unfortunately, they still tend to brand toys for girls and boys, and I think you can guess which floor this is. I always feel sorry for this poor man. And the way that you make toys in the old world is you ask permission. So you go to a large company like Mattel, and you say, here's my idea, I'm an inventor, here's my idea, what do you think? And they say, yes, we love that idea, we're going to pay you a royalty, we're going to take that idea and we'll make it, and it'll turn up on the shelf in approximately 4 years' time. I had some friends who went through this process. It was 4 years for them. I was told that Monster High was 4 years from concept to shelf. It may be 2 at best, and sometimes even longer. It depends on the queue. That's how it works. And there are people who invent and have plenty of toys that come out, and that's the system. But people like me who aren't Mattel, historically, you could never take your idea and go and actually make it yourself. I wanted to make a doll that wasn't just pink and skinny and just about fashion. I wanted to see if that was possible, and I didn't have to ask anybody. We looked around. American Girl is a US only product. It's $109 per doll, and they offer customization, but they're a traditional manufacturer, and the way they do it is you walk into the store and what they actually have is 40 different dolls, and you kind of zone towards the one that looks most like you. So if you want one with curly hair and brown eyes, you've got 3 to choose from. This is the My American Girl thing. It is 40% of Mattel's fast growth profit area right now. It's about a $500 million a year business for them, and it's only in the States. One of the other things about making toys is brand building costs a fortune. I mean, this doesn't really change, but historically, again, as an inventor, you'd go to somebody like Hasbro, and then they would pay for all of the money, for all of the stuff required to market your product. So let's, again, use something like Monster High or Lego as an example, right? You would think Lego just spreads organically, because everybody loves Lego. There is not one person on the planet, I don't think, who doesn't love Lego. Nevertheless, Lego launched Lego Friends for girls, I think the year before last, and they spent $40 million launching that in the States. It's now something like their 3rd most popular product, but even Lego has to spend that crazy amount of money for something that you would think just would walk itself off the shelf. How do you get around this? So we looked at American Girl and we looked at this, and it can feel really overwhelming, and I think historically most people would have said, oh well, no can do, right? How can you get through this? You can either pitch to this system or you can walk away and do something else. But there's other stuff happening. So Etsy is a huge site, mainly populated in the States, but going global. And it's a site where people make stuff and sell stuff to each other. It's just basically for handcrafted goods. This is an example of the democratization of retail. So one person can make a dress and send it to one person. You don't need a shop to do that. And Etsy's growth has been spectacular. We saw these are dresses for Blythe dolls. We saw a massive difference in the type and style and quality of stuff being sold on Etsy than you would see on the high street. But even just in like styles, we were like, well, why is that so different? Is it that the high street is it a different strata? Like, what is it? And we're still finding that out. So we're a startup. One of the funny things about startups, I come from, as I said, a digital world, and the big thing in startup land is lean startup. Lean startup is where you A/B test, you iterate, you test, you iterate. You have an idea, obviously, to start, but you test everything. What the software world isn't particularly aware of is that the lean startup came out of manufacturing. It comes out of the Toyota system. So this system is being applied to development, software development right now, but it has been in manufacturing. It's doubly significant for us because we're doing both. The kind of thesis behind Lean Startup is this. 95% of it is just the hard work, the trying, the testing, the iterating. And so again, going back to traditional, you'd spend years doing this silently, in-house and privately. And you'd spend a lot of money testing with user focus groups or something like that. You wouldn't necessarily know whether you had a hit or not until you launched, and you'd spend, often your hit would basically depend on how much money you spend at launch. This is a funny old system. So we went live with our product demo. We were like, okay, we're going to behave like a purely software company. We're going to put our physical product that is completely unfinished live and see what happens. We're going to get feedback from users and talk to them about it. And so this is what went live last summer. And it was basically strings and sellotape. You could only make a doll in bone white. It was £99. It wasn't toy safe, but the fundamentals of kind of fiddling around with a screen and then there's a physical product happened. And our early adopters turned up and went, oh my God, that's brilliant. I want that for my kids. I want my kids to create. Meanwhile, we were sat there going, oh my God, it's only in white, it's horrible. They look weird. What are we going to do about this? And so that's been our journey. The early adopters turned up and said, how about you try this? And how about you try that? And here, we made something for you to make you laugh. So this was last November, just one example. We do science with our early adopters as well. So we have a forum, we have a thread there, for instance, that says, we're doing science. It's pretty much the most popular thread on the forum. And our early users will do all sorts of stuff and feed it back to us, which is amazing. So for instance, when we were looking at skin color, we didn't really know where to start. We thought maybe it's industrial dyes, not quite sure. Started playing around with dye, did that classic thing where we tried Dylon because everyone said, oh, it's Dylon, it's industrial dye, just get Dylon. And we got the Dylon and stuck the dolls through the washing machine. But that wasn't the nylon Dylon, so it didn't work. Meanwhile, we were boiling the doll parts in PG tips, and that produced Caucasian. So we were like, this is really interesting. We went through tea, blueberries, saffron, you name it. And we came up with some amazing colors. And meanwhile, we were testing with industrial dyes. What we currently use is dye in light brown, medium, and brown and dark brown. Medium brown came out green. We don't know why. It just does. It reacts with the nylon. It comes out green. So we thought, oh dear, green's not really what people want for dolls, or is it? So we left it in. We said, well, we'll try. And as it turns out, if you start the avatar with green, more people end up making a doll than if you were to start with a prescribed skin color or white. So zombie green stays in. This is a picture of one of our users playing around with her own version of actually ink here. We make and share as much as we can as well. I mean, with this theme of democratization that I think is really coming out here, I often get asked, don't you worry that somebody's going to copy you? Don't you worry about Mattel copying you or Hasbro, one of the big names? Don't you worry about somebody small copying you? And the short answer is no, we don't. Because we share it. We learn from them, they learn from us. But the other thing is the innovation speed is so rapid that I think that if you learn, you have to keep learning. And the more you grow a fan base, the more chance you have. You can buy your attention or you can grow the love. And the sharing is something that really resonates with customers. They share with each other and they do stuff for us and for each other that we couldn't have really predicted. And they're making and making and making. Now obviously our brand is, the doll brand is called Makies, and we are encouraging this. But the creativity of users, of parents and kids, is unlimited. So for us, it is about customization. We're not making aerospace parts, but the creativity, when you're talking about the next generation, is a massive driver. So the skin colors were complete, and we put those out with an app. And that's when it really started to come back to us what people were wanting from this. And it turns out they want to create characters and tell stories. That's what dolls are for. Dolls are not for just dressing up in clothes. They're for playing with, for creating stories together. All sorts of characters started to merge with names, with backstories, with their own fashion, either hacked together from other dolls or made by the kids or parents themselves. This is Mushroom. This is somebody who's made a whole set of doll furniture using IKEA cutlery drawers and a bit of wallpaper. And they started to show us what the dolls could look like, given a bit of professional, what's called face-ups, and fake eyelashes from Boots. We now use the eyelashes for our premium dolls. Obviously, this is the sort of thing that is getting quite a lot of attention. That's a good thing for us. Again, as a startup, being able to take part in this has enabled us to be part of that story. People still come to us and say, I mean, if 3D printing is mentioned, we tend to get a phone call. But also now if creativity or toys or games or play is mentioned, we tend to get a phone call. The other thing that we're encouraging is the act of playing to create other stuff. So we build the dolls with empty skulls and holes in the neck and a backplate in case anybody wants to hack and play and make something more advanced than just a doll. And this is one of the first things that came back. One of our users made some nekomimi ears, which is those Japanese cat ears that are reactive to sound. And she made it with felt ears, a couple of servos, and a small Arduino, so that when she walks into the room and claps her hands, her doll's ears turn towards her. This is awesome and something we'd like to work on in the future. Other mods arrived. This is a doll, a Makey, where the owner had carved the eyes literally with a scalpel and the mouth. And that's given us ideas for more kind of face shapes and what we can do with it. So they're showing us what they want. It's product development, live and in public. And a couple of people said to me, you can't do that with physical product. It just can't be done. But we're doing it. So I think I will stand up here and say it can be done. It's not for everybody. It does mean that we've gone from that live demo to retail now in 1 year. And the brilliant thing about this is we're in Selfridges, but Selfridges came to us and they said, we also want to learn about this new stuff. We want to see what experiential play in the store is like. We want to learn about 3D printing. We want to do maybe some printing in store. I think retailers are also thinking, you know, this idea of sort of shifting product off a shelf. Barbie is yay high because that's the distance between shelves originally on a toy, in a toy store in the 50s, whatever it was. Shelves don't really exist in Amazon. And so the experience of going to a shop is changing under our very eyes. Now, the thing about using 3D printing is fundamentally we're talking about consumer goods, and I think most consumers are very price sensitive. They have expectations that are just there, and dolls are now £20. That's how much they cost for the very basic ones. We're finding that people are prepared to pay more for creativity and customization, and obviously toys go up to about the £100 mark, so we feel that we're very much at the point where kind of Moore's law, the proliferation of machines and costs are meeting what consumers want to do. But the margins do need work. Retailers expect 50% for a physical store. Amazon, interestingly, has just announced some really cool stuff where if you make an app, as we do, you can embed the affiliate link into your systems and then sell physical products through your app. This is really new. When we launched our app on the Apple Store in March, there were pretty much no other apps out there that were shifting physical product. But I think we're going to see this proliferate quite a bit in the next couple of years. Another thing that comes up is this idea of hype. So, you know, I see a lot of negativity often in 3D printing circles, maybe, where people are like, oh, the hype is terrifying and, you know, it's not real, and the actual practical day-to-day stuff of using 3D printing is a lot harder than it's made out to be. Now, that's true. Hardware is hard. It's definitely hard. You see this gray streak? I didn't have it 2 years ago. But it's not impossible, and I think the hype is justified. I know the hype is justified. This was July 2012 from the Gartner Hype Cycle. Gartner is a research company. They produce the hype cycle every year. The pattern never changes. What they do is they plot, I'm sure you're aware of this, they plot emerging technologies and all sorts of things along that cycle. Some of them fall off, but basically they move through this same pattern of hype, and then the realization that you can't 3D print your kidneys at home on the moon, and then the plateau of productivity where in fact it does go into consumer mainstream or industrial application. This year, Gartner separated out their definition of hype and have kept consumer 3D printing, this idea of printing at home, a machine on every desktop at the top, whereas enterprise is rapidly moving into absolute mainstream. The reason I think it's justified is because of this basic step change. You don't have to ask permission anymore. So we made a physical product. We've reached customers around the world. Most of our customers at the moment are coming from America. When we launched, it was the UK, 90% UK, 10% the States. A year later, it's 60% the States. We sent dolls as far as Singapore and New Zealand. We didn't need to ask permission for that. We didn't need to ask permission to go on the App Store. You upload your app and that's how that works. And we didn't need to ask permission to make a physical product. And that's here to stay. And so when everybody can take part, surely things become more and more amazing. Obviously, there is stuff that makes it hard for us and for everybody. It's not cheap. It's not as cheap as injection molding units. But at the same time, we don't have to go to China and have production lines of people hand painting dolls and putting stuff out in that kind of language barrier miles away way. Shipping around the world is completely different local production. We need materials to come down, we need colors in plastic. This is all going to happen. You're going to see it right here. Half of this stuff is going to turn up within the next year, certainly within 5. So I'm completely happy with the way things are going. We will have our distributed manufacturing network. Just to finish off, the idea of reaching people, becoming known, brand building, that doesn't go away. Even though we don't have to ask permission, we still are up against the Legos and the Barbies and the Monster High of this world. And we're a startup. We don't have $40 million just for marketing in our pockets. So we're building a game. This was always the original vision, that virtual goods would produce physical goods. The game bit came last only because when I went out to raise money, people said, but can you actually manufacture? Can this really happen? And we've got to the point where the solid answer to that is yes. So now the next step is the game. The game is actually, this is meta, has got 3D printers in it. And in the game you get to make, you grow your resources to make your clothes, to make your textiles, to make your clothes, to sell in your shop. And you make your accessories on your 3D printer and your clothes on your textile printer. And this is going to basically teach kids, really, to do what I'm doing, which I love. This is our plan for 2014. The game, more content marketing, so that's more of that, getting users to spread the message for you. The game, the in-store printing, so we got to the point where we've got shoes and accessories and bags now that people can upload their own, or we're going to just upload the models and let people print their own. Do that in store, get out to Android, get people customizing cloth to print on textiles, to put in craft kits, to put on the doll that you've made yourself. This for me is a completely different, totally creative world where previously toys, dolls particularly, was pick it off a shelf and that's what you got. And you 23-inch waist and 6 feet legs. That's me. Thank you.